So, maybe just to get, I'm just going to ask a couple questions and I'm going to open up the audience, but there's some really iconic characters and performances, and maybe just briefly talk about how Reggie, Michael, and Angus kind of came into your life and became a part of this.
It's such a wonderful blessing. Angus was in my, is this working? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, can you hear me out there?
Yeah.
Angus was the first adult actor I ever worked with. He worked on my film, Jim the World's Greatest. I started that film when I was 18 years old with my neighborhood friend. We were completely out of control. The logistics was falling apart. And it would always be my job. We would bring Angus in at 8 in the morning. He'd sit back in this crummy apartment all day. We wouldn't get to him, and I'd have to walk down the hall and go, excuse me, sir, but you could have to leave and we're not going to shoot you today after 8 hours of waiting. And he would turn and look at me with that raised eyelid, and I'd back out like that. So he terrified me at an early age. And I always thought, oh, well, he would make a good pirate or a horror star. And then when I made Phantasm, brought him in. Michael Baldwin starred in my second movie, and he was just the greatest kid actor I could possibly imagine.
The world's greatest?
Yeah, no, he was not in that. He was in Kenny. And he just was a kid who just was so natural for because I would meet these Hollywood kids who would come in and they'd like go, hello, Mr. Coscarelli, and they have these bowl haircuts that their mothers thought would make them cute. But, Michael was a real kid, and so I wrote the role for him. Reggie Bannister, which you'll be able to read in the book now, true story. I had heard that he was the greatest actor at Long Beach City College, okay? We heard about his reputation preceded us, and so I wanted to go meet him. So I went down to a beer bar in Long Beach where I grew up, where he was playing, called the Wooden Keg. And I went with my co-producer, Paul Pepperman. We were both 19, how old were we? Yeah, we were 18 years old. Walked in, got a table in the back because we weren't legal to drink and were afraid we were going to get evicted. Reggie saw us, he finished the set, everybody cheered. He comes in, hey man, and he was just like this character. And he came up to us and he went to the barmaid. He goes, round of beers for everybody. And so the first time I had an alcoholic beverage in a restaurant, in a bar, was courtesy of Reggie. And so these guys have now become lifelong friends, and so sorry, of course, that Angus passed 2 years ago. But he loved coming out and meeting the fans. And for me, the best part of making Phantasm was these friendships that I made.
I think I know the answer to this, but why are you such a dick? Why did you steal the Jawas from George Lucas?
Yeah, it's and that's not in the book, so you'll get a raw story here. Yeah, we had shot most of the movie, all the scenes with our little dwarf creatures, or critters as we called them, and the scenes looked great and they were terrifying like that. And somebody came over one day and said, oh yeah, there's this trailer playing at the theater and your guys are in it. And so that weekend we went out and watched it. Sure enough, there are the little guys in brown hoods. And so, for like about, 20 minutes, we thought, oh, well, maybe we gotta go and reshoot it. We could make them red cloaks or gray cloaks and redo it. And it was just such a big hassle. It's kind of like, all right, so the movie will come out, it'll go away, no one will ever think about it by the time we get it out. And of course, it was Star Wars.
Do you know George Lucas, and has he ever
Never
called
met
you?
him. No, he's never called me.
All right.
Thank God.
So I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to the audience here, because I know some of you folks probably have some questions for Don. Who's first? Right, orange shirt, I believe, in the right in the center,
Yeah.
waving your arm. Yeah.
Where is that amazing car right now?
Where is the amazing car that has a long storied history
Yeah,
with you?
well, the one that we saw up here, only God knows. At the end of shooting, our art director, David Brown, was like, the car was a never-ending source of pain because, Detroit's finest in that day, there were a lot of rumors about there was a lot of weed smoking going on the assembly lines. Well, it happened when our car was made. The biggest question we'd always have every morning is, will we be able to get the car started? So it was just a hassle. And then, I made this, as it turns out, foolish decision to cut that sunroof so Bill Thornberry could have his action moment. But the friend of ours who put in the sunroof installed it wrong, so every time it rained, it soaked the car. So after we finished shooting it, went up to Dave's house, he held on to it, and I think maybe a year later he called, hey, the thing's all full of water, what do I do with this thing? And just sell it, you've been nice, keep the money. And I heard he sold it to somebody for $1,000. And the last it was seen was out in the desert outside of LA near Hesperia. There was a sighting of it at a used car lot for like $1,200, and it's never surfaced since. So my sense is probably what happened is that somebody bought it, and a lot of the parts on it, the fenders and the front grille, are worth thousands each, and probably parted it and then junked the car. That's unless somebody's holding it somewhere, I don't know. Anyway, that's the long story of what happened to the car.
Smithsonian?
We could start a letter writing campaign to find the car and put it in the Smithsonian, possibly. I don't know. It could start right here, right now. Magic can happen right here, or not. All right, back corner over there.
Yeah. So the scene where Mike is with the psychic and he puts his hand in the box, is that a reference to Dune with Paul Atreides and the Ben Gesserit? What do you call it? Yeah.
It's a nerdy question, sir. We're going to accept it. Oh, I should also say, we have 2 more moderate prizes in this bag. And
For good questions.
Our 2 favorite questions, completely arbitrary, are going to win 2 moderate prizes out of this red bag. I don't know if this is one of them, Don. Is this one of them?
No, because he's put me on the spot.
No, okay, it's not. Sorry, sir. I'm so close to mediocrity, but you can taste it.
But, look, I had a lot of influences when I made Phantasm. And there are maybe films that I borrowed more from than things that you mentioned, but certainly Invaders from Mars, I love that. And the aspect of the boy seeing, the flying saucer land in his backyard and nobody believing him. And I thought that would be a good thing to put into Phantasm. At one time really interested in making the Ray Bradbury book, Something Wicked This Way Comes, and could see some parallels there. Although the best part of it was I tried to get the rights, and you can read about it all in the movie. And I was always a little sensitive that maybe it might look like there were similarities to it. And we had a screening of Phantasm, which I couldn't attend, but Angus went to. And the author of Something Wicked, Ray Bradbury, was there. And after the movie, he came over to Angus and goes, great movie, I loved it. And I always thought, oh, that's cool. So I find that when I see influences, or I find influences, that by the time my film is actually made, the influences, I get carried away and, put in Jawas and flying spheres and things like that have nothing to do with the inspiration I started with.
But that's a hard no for Dune.
I never thought they'd make that into a movie. That was a joke.
All right, ready?
Yeah, following up on the influences question, I think everybody would consider Phantasm a horror movie, but we also have aliens, other worlds, dimensional portals, science fiction elements. Were you consciously bridging genres, or were you just telling a story and that's how it happened to turn out?
And can everybody in the audience hear the question? I couldn't understand the answer. Were you? I'll just go ahead and repeat it just in case. Were you consciously bridging genres, or were you conceiving of a horror movie?
I absolutely was conceiving of a horror movie, and I think that possibly subconsciously, my main goal was to make something different. And even at that young age, like all of us, we've seen so much filmed content that when you're watching any average movie, you always know, oh, they're going to open the door and that's where the bad guy's going to be. We all know that. So I was always trying to go against what the stereotype was and try to come up with something different, which led me into science fiction. But it's a really good question, because then, after I finished Bubba Hotep, working with Joe Lansdale, and if anybody have ever read the kind of books where he mashes up genres, and we were talking about this, that was the first time I realized that Phantasm was a mashup. So maybe the reason I like Bubba, which had a mummy and it had old Elvis and it had in a rest home and a black JFK, it had a real mashup. I realized that, man, many years ago I was subconsciously doing mashups, so it's something that I like and respond to. So, hey, that was a good question.
Yeah, I mentioned, you said it was a good question. Was it a mediocre good question, or was it
I think
a
it's
worthy?
a go all the way question.
All right, yeah, let's do it. You got a prize. Come right up to the stage. Round of applause for our second prize winner.
Fresh from Wellgo, USA, Phantasm 3 on Blu-ray.
Blu-ray, no,
Gorgeous
not a DVD,
restoration.
not a VHS, but
In stores now.
the highest quality of formats for your high quality question, sir. Congratulations.
Hey, and one more sales note if I could, Jim. Well,
Go right ahead.
I just learned, and I don't have a copy to give out, but they have made the very first U.S. steelbook of the original Phantasm, and the steel cover on it is really sweet with imagery you don't usually see in Phantasm releases.
All right, you heard it here
Coming
first.
this in November.
All right, just in time for the holidays. All right, what do we got? Another question from the audience here, right here, black shirt.
Yeah, so many movies have a lot of survivalist elements where people are like putting together traps and like takes a hammer, puts the shotgun shell on it, that kind of stuff. Incident on Mountain Pass. I was wondering, like, where does that come from? Do you just like, play a lot of mousetrap, or?
Where does your love of survivalist themes in movies come from? Is it from the childhood playing of the hit trademark game Mousetrap or other areas?
No, I saw Mousetrap on the TV commercial, and my freaking parents never would get it for me, and I wanted it. That's a great game. I'm not sure where it comes from. I'm always interested in stories like that. I read stories. There's a great book that I read a few years. It's probably a 20-year-old book. It was called "And I Alone Survived," about this woman whose airplane hit the Sierra Nevada mountains, and she was wearing no shoes in the snow, and she managed to save herself. I love those kind of stories.
Did it talk about why she was wearing no shoes? Or was it? It's a wrong question.
She was on her way to Palm Springs.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And she was not wearing other things too, which is an element of it, but we won't go into that. But yeah, it's interesting though that then making Phantasm 2, there was the moment where they needed to arm up, and we started to go into that hardware store, which just seemed, it was a challenge to try to figure out what kind of weaponry one could put together out of a hardware store, and that appealed to me. And I don't know that I was thinking of that we had kind of done it in Phantasm 1 with the hammer in that, so I don't know.
I don't know if this is true. I heard this, but I'm not sure. We've never talked about it, but I've heard, this is an independent film. It's very, as evidenced by the book, you did things in a lo-fi way. Is it true that you've fabricated and created the cemetery? And if so, is that a wrong story, or is that true?
No,
And how do you do that?
Absolutely true, because what do you need for a cemetery? You need grass and tombstones. So we got a permit to take over this park, and then we went over to 20th Century Fox, and they cut us a deal. I think it was $200. We were able to rent all of their old tombstones for like a month, and took them out, and we'd set them up. And that, I think if you looked at it, the tombstones are always moving around because we were resetting them to the light.
200, but can filmmakers still do that today? Can they roll into, just like rent 100 tombstones from 20th Century Fox? Or that's the days gone by?
A lot of it's hard to know because I haven't done it lately, but there are some a lot of rental prop places that are filled with all kinds of interesting stuff. Generally, it's pretty expensive stuff to rent, of course.
All right, we got two on the aisle. You guys are the next two. Back first, yes, and then right after, yes, and then right after the next person on the aisle. That was a confusing way to say it. Whoever says it first, yeah. Go first, and then the next person goes.
For those of us who grew up around this time period that the movie was made, this is very authentic. I mean, what it was like growing up at that time. I actually saw the movie some years afterwards, and I remember when I saw it, I remember thinking that I had seen these guys in movies all the time when I was a kid, and the fact is I never saw them in any movie. They just reminded me of people I grew up around. So my question is, when did you first realize personally that this movie had become so important to that generation of people in that time frame?
Well, look, thank you for the question. That was not something that came early. You know, Phantasm was like a drive-in, was released as, you know, a drive-in exploitative horror film with a sense of humor. The original distributor, Advocacy, had a lot of fun with it. They would go into theaters. They would bring Angus out. Angus back in the day would go in full makeup, and he would stand behind the screen. And as soon as the movie would come out, the spotlight would come and hit him, and he'd stand up and go, "Boy!" And then he'd go like this. And then usually the exhibitor on a string would have like a aluminum foil ball like wonkily come down. And the audiences loved it, you know, and they remember
I
this.
should have done that tonight. Next time you come, we're going to suspend an aluminum foil ball from the top
But
for you.
to finish that question, when I started to notice that there was something about Phantasm, and it's probably a good lesson, is it wasn't until I made Phantasm 2, and then every article I would read would go, well, this new one's all right, but the first one was a classic. And that's where it started to get some sort of a groundswell. But thanks for the question.
And also on the aisle over in that general direction.
Okay, it shows how many times I've probably seen it, but is the hand motif intentional? Because you keep repeating a hand pattern, like the hand in the sign of the woman, and there's a photocopy of a hand in Mike's wall, and when the little guy's in the ice cream truck, there's a kind of a hand, like it keeps happening, his hand in the box. Was that actually intentional, or is it just coincidence?
And what does it all mean? Tell us about the hand, Don.
This is a winner
That's
question.
a good question. That's a pretty good question. I like it. I'm looking bated breath for the answer. Come on down. You got yourself the last item in the red bag. Plus the red bag, right? Maybe
I have never had that connection.
Oh, no, you keep more.
That's the last one.
Yeah, but there's something else here. You got this brown bag in the red bag, and the red bag, and the prize.
Oh, and the prize is, again from Wellgo USA, Phantasm Oblivion, remastered sound in Blu-ray, available now. Here you go. Thank you so much.
Now let's hear about the answer.
Completely by accident. Yeah. I mean, yes, I told the art director to put a palmist hand on there. The other hand was something that came from my childhood desk where I was experimenting with photo paper and it just got stuck up there. And the third hand was, I was searching to try to put some kind of evidence in and I've never talked about this ever, in the ice cream truck to show that the dwarf was there and then he was gone. And the only thing I could think of was, oh, there'd be a block of ice that he kind of melted and some of his fluid leaked, as Reggie predicted, into the ice cream truck. So that's where they came from. There was no grand design unless I just had a subliminal interest in that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. All right, we're going to take two more questions, and then anybody that wants to come downstairs, Don's going to be signing the rest of the books,
Yes.
And you can also ask additional questions during that time period, but in a thoughtful and short way. But now, towards the second to the last row there over on the side, question.
I feel that one of the most important characters of the film is the soundtrack. The music is just so beautiful and has such a strong giallo feeling to it, like the Italian horror films of the late 60s and 70s. There's a famous story about how John Carpenter brought Halloween to Mustafa Akkad, and he watched it and said it was boring. And then John Carpenter took the film back home, sat in his studio, came up with the soundtrack on his keyboard, reintroduced it to Mustafa Akkad, and Mustafa said, "Oh my God, this is the scariest movie I've ever seen." I would love to hear a little bit about how you came up with your soundtrack and how it came to fruition.
It's a pretty good question too,
Yeah,
but we don't
it's
have
a
more
good one.
DVDs and Blu-rays, so.
Sorry. Fred Myro had composed the music on my first two films, and I asked him to come on board, and he volunteered, and he brought a friend of his, Malcolm Seagrave, to co-compose, and they worked together on the film. I gave them two record albums back in the day of vinyl. I gave them Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and Vangelis's Heaven and Hell. And I said, give me something like these. Okay? And then one day I got this phone call and they said, come on down, we've got something. And this is the beauty of being a movie director, is I got to get the first performance of that Phantasm theme. They had a baby grand piano, and the two of them sat there and did a duet with all the little nuances, you know, the B theme and that you just heard in the end credits there. And you know, it was marvelous. And I do want to take one bit of credit though, which I think is a really effective section of the movie. I liked the music so well, and I'd seen other films. I guess what I had seen was one of my early influential films, Goldfinger, when they would take the James Bond theme and play it during the action scenes. And I said, I want you to try to take the theme, and we have this one action scene where Mike gets caught and thrown in the hearse. Can you adapt the theme but at a faster pace? And then they came up with that beautiful interpretation of that. So yeah, both of those guys were geniuses. Both of them had classical background trainings. Freddie Myro was like he was an apprentice to Leonard Bernstein at the New York Philharmonic. He was a Guggenheim Fellow. Malcolm Seagrave was composing for chamber music, and yet both of them had a real love of rock and roll, and they were, in their side jobs, they were producing rock bands. So they were meant for all seasons, and they came up with this beautiful thing, and they both passed away, and we dedicate the screening to you, Fred and Malcolm. Thank you.
All right, so we've got the final question of the night. There's so many options. Where are we going? You know what? The back row, because I can't see it, is often neglected. I'm going to go right to the back row. I apologize to all of us with hands up. Unless your question sucks, and then we're going to go to one of those other people. But no pressure to you. Go ahead.
The sphere is so iconic and has become such a, the association with this movie and all of the sequels. How many iterations did you go through? How did you finally end up with the two spikes in the drill? And logistically, the low budget and the time frame, how many problems did you run into trying to make that realistic?
It's another excellent question. Sorry we don't have a gift for you. Hey, we had a number of different sphere models. Okay, every different iteration, every movement is a different thing. Comes around a corner, it's on a string, flies down a wall, flies down the hall. A junior college baseball pitcher throwing it in reverse motion, and we just got the sweet spot of the 60 frames per second. Because think about that. You're throwing it from here, so its maximum velocity is right as it passes camera, and then it slows as it goes away. So you reverse it, and it's coming slow, and then it hurtles going by. We didn't know that. We just saw it after we shot it. It was great. But the actual design, this prop maker named Will Green was his name, and his stock and trade was making big turntables for car commercials and auto shows. And he didn't know anything about horror, but he got into this thing. He said, well, what do you want the blades to look like? And I kind of sketched out something with the double blades, trying to make it look like a prong and a fishhook. And he did really refined and made it much more elegant. So he created that, and then he found the right kind of drill and chrome plated it and put it in there. And then of course he went even farther, because even though he was a horror guy, as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, here's a little baggie," and I go, "What's this?" "It's chopped up foam rubber. If you put it in with the blood, it'll look like brain matter coming in." and of course we put it in, and it just jammed the pump, so we never used it on the film. So anybody could, get enthusiastic about horror.